Hello. Good evening, everybody that's watching. Hopefully, some of you guys are out there trying out something new today. I actually need to. Oh, I just realized I need to actually fix my. I didn't bring the little chat. What's the word for it? The little chat overlay thing. So I got to fix that real quick. All right, let's see how this works. Okay. He's late again. Listen, man. You just have to accept it, okay? Life happens. I was actually messing around with this new overlay that I'm trying to get dialed in here. Just trying to up the branding this summer. Get some fancy overlays, get some maybe new logo in there, all that good stuff. So Clax, what's up? Your present. I was tardy, but only 1 minute more than the teacher. Love the new overlay. Hey, love to hear it. I'm still messing around with some of the finer points, but it's a start. It's something. I'm working on I'm going to be recording with Ron Stewart next week. So I wanted to get something professional-ish looking for that because I haven't done any like guest stuff before. Figured I would try to, hit the ground running with that. So this is, I can show you guys, I have a setup for 2 cameras here. So should transition nicely into the 2-person stream once we have a second camera going. But yeah, DK, what's up, man? Welcome in to the stream. We got HM in here as well. And we got some stuff to talk about. I went ahead and threw Kittle onto the thumbnail because I made the thumbnail earlier when we didn't have any topics, and I figured I would very, very quickly explain why I ended up moving Kittle down in the rankings. He's older. He had a great year last year, but 31 years old. I believe he turns 32 in season. Yeah, October 9th, he'll turn 32. And the thing that occurred to me, or I guess I'd heard it before, but didn't really think about it, is just how Christian McCaffrey being out kind of helped Kittle to hit a different ceiling. And that's, I've definitely heard research on this, but essentially tight ends and running backs kind of cap each other's target ceilings. And so when you think of a team with like a really elite tight end, they very rarely have a running back that's commanding a humongous amount of targets, and then vice versa, right? And that's just logical because they occupy a lot of the same areas of the field. Both can operate as kind of an outlet pass. And so if there's one of those on the team that's typically the go-to, that's going to be at the expense of the other. And so I do think with a healthy Christian McCaffrey, we could see Kittle not necessarily struggle, like still be a tight end one, clearly like a top half tight end one, but maybe not push for that like tight end pushing for the same type of scoring as like a Trey McBride or a Brock Bowers. I think it would be very possible that he kind of drops down a couple points there. So, with that in mind, if he's not going to be giving you top of the position numbers, I just think putting him more in the early 2 range rather than trading first for him makes a little bit more sense. So did move him down a touch. Obviously still a great guy to get on your contending teams that don't have a Bowers or a McBride. If you can get him, without giving up a first, I still like rostering him for sure. So yeah, for the rest of this, there are some different questions, different topics to talk about here. AJ had one from, or I should say Austin had one from last week that I didn't get to, so I'll jump on that real quick. He said, I realized I have 19 firsts next year in 8 leagues. 6 of those teams are for sure contending, and 6 contending teams I have 2 firsts on. What is the best way to trade a first as a contender? Ignore the specifics of examples, but possible options for trading first would be like straight up for someone like a Higgins, upgrading to an elite player like a Nico plus first for Jefferson, or a semi-elite player like a first and a second for Rashee Rice, or breaking up on a high-valued team. So that's a pretty interesting question. Trading firsts away. I have some thoughts here. We got Yella in the chat saying, do my questions last. Marty's here as well. What's up? I don't like how small these messages are. I think I need to move the... I think I maybe need to move the fantasy points promo thing to the other side of the screen, because I feel like I don't like that these aren't left aligned. I want them like over here, so maybe I'll move the fantasy points thing over. Okay, so trading away firsts, yeah, so it's definitely a good problem to have when you have a contending team, a team that you think is ready to contend now that has multiple firsts. And I'd say the first thing is like, I'm not going out right now and thinking I need to trade those firsts. Because like if you're ready to contend now, you're probably not in a position where you desperately need to go out and do that right away. So I think in most scenarios, I'm just going to be saving those picks for a rainy day. Kind of like what you said, Yella, in case you run into other injuries and other teams that are out of contention. Yeah, so that's definitely a good point. Because what can happen in season is like you get to week 4, week 5, week 6, there are going to be teams that are 0-4, teams that are 1-3. If you play in a league with somewhat rational people, those teams are going to want to move on from some of their older producers, or just break down better players for picks, for a large package of picks. Now, you're definitely going to run into managers that are like, okay, I'm 0-4, my team is low value, but there's absolutely no way that I'm trading Nico Collins because he's my best player. He's like a foundational asset. That happens. But there are going to be people in most leagues that are willing to deal with you, especially if they have running backs, right? Like, let's say the Jahmyr Gibbs team goes out and starts 0-4, even though that's a young player with high value. Most teams that are looking at a rebuild are going to put a Jahmyr Gibbs type of guy on the block. They're just going to be picky about what they get back. And that's where having 2 firsts in your back pocket can really come in handy. So as a general rule, I'm not going to trade a first before the season starts unless I'm getting a clear win. Unless I think this is the best chance to capitalize on this first that I'm going to have at any point this season. And that's a high bar to clear, right? Because there's always the chance that something better could come along. So you want to be pretty picky about what you're doing. I would not, right now is not a time I'd be entertaining a trade like a first rounder for a T. Higgins. I personally wouldn't want to do that right now, even though I think that's totally fine. Like, I think that's a totally solid trade. I have him as around a base first. Maybe if it was like a team that seemed locked into the playoffs, I would make a deal like that. But for the most part, I'm just going to hold off. I don't need to send that first. And I think you're more likely to be missing out on something great if you trade it prematurely than if you go out and then if you turn down a deal like that. Like, yeah, maybe it sucks later on if you don't have T. Higgins and you can't get that exact deal. Something is going to come along with that first that is probably equally, if not more, appealing for your team. So holding out for the eventual rebuilders, going out and trying to make deals for a Nico Collins, a Brian Thomas, Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Bijan, like those really high-end guys that can win you the league. That's a great way to do it. And then, and upgrading. Like it could be just 2 firsts straight up for a guy, or it could be a first plus one of your existing players to upgrade. But in general, if I'm trading a first right now, I'm probably looking to get either a massive value win, or I'm trying to get one of those like top 24 type of startup assets. I'll throw in like a Ladd McConkey, a Travis Hunter, Drake London into that group as well. But as much as I like Bucky Irving, for example, I don't necessarily know that I'd go out and well, that's not true. I'd probably trade a first for, if it was a first straight up, I would trade it for Bucky or for Achane or something like that, because that's a guy that's going to boost your projection the most immediately. And what I will say is, when it makes sense to trade that first earlier as opposed to later is if you think it can have a material difference on your chances of getting a bye week. Because that is obviously the goal that we have with every one of our contending teams. We know we can't lock in a championship from week 1, but we can give ourselves a better than average chance to secure that bye week, which is going to really increase your chances of winning. So that's something I would say. Like if it's a strong team, but you feel like, yeah, maybe I could, I can get one more difference maker on this team. I can really push for that bye. I'm going to be in way better shape. That's when I would say, okay, go out to your league mates and see if you can get one of those deals done before the season. But the last thing I'll say on Austin's question in particular is you don't want to work, it's okay to be a contender and still have a lot of picks. Like you don't have to like pick a side there. You can do both. That's just going to keep you in contention for more and more and more years. Technically, could you eke out a little bit more win probability by trading away all those picks? Sure. But in the long run, you're probably going to be better off if you're balancing that advantage across multiple seasons and continually adding youth and adding rookies to your teams. That's just going to make stronger and stronger teams over time. So don't worry about having 19 firsts across 8 leagues is awesome. That's a great thing. As long as you're still able to compete, it's fine if you end up with 10 or 12 of those left over when it's all said and done. I like to be overweight the rookie classes every year if I can be. I did have more firsts than I had leagues this year. I did not have nearly as many seconds as I wish I did, but I was able to trade into some, thankfully. So we are skipping over Yella for now per his request. If anybody else has questions, obviously jump in. Marty says, Ron is dope. Glad you're going to have him on. Yeah, I love Ron. I wouldn't go so far as to say we're like close friends or anything, because we've only really, we're in one league together. He did come on my podcast before or like right when I had first launched the YouTube channel. I was still doing a Dynasty podcast. He came on my podcast and we've been kind of friendly ever since. He's offered some encouraging words about the YouTube stuff. So he was happy to come on. I was definitely appreciative that he was willing to do that. And it should be a good time. He's a fun guy to talk to for sure. So excited to see how that turns out. We're recording something together on Tuesday. I don't know exactly what day it'll be up on the channel, but sometime next week it should be for sure. So Clanger had something in the chat where he said, Dynasty Domain. Okay, so he's referencing a video that came out from Dynasty Domain a couple days ago about startups. And I'm actually working on my own startup strategy video, which I'd like to, I don't know, if there's anybody in the chat that wants to kind of bounce some ideas back and forth, I'd be happy to talk about what I have in mind right now. But they put out their kind of startup guide, and they are really locked in to this idea of prioritizing the elite wide receivers in startups, basically doing this like 3 wide receiver start, or at least 2 elite wide receivers to start. And what they said is that they think that the wide receivers are actually better value insulated and are in higher demand in terms of people actually trying to acquire them. So the liquidity of the wide receivers is better. And also because the quarterbacks available in rounds 4 and 5 are better, they prefer to take wide receivers early. And they think this is going to become the new top strategy. So we'll see about a new top strategy. I don't know for sure like how much the market's really going to move on this. We have seen wide receivers, I guess, creep up a little bit in recent seasons. I kind of think that's more to do with the way that the quarterback position has like flattened out, which I guess you could say like maybe the market continues to move that way if the quarterback scoring doesn't change. But I think there's a few things going on. Obviously, we've had a major influx of these elite wide receiver talents in not just, I mean, Chase and Jefferson and Lamb were a few years ago now, but we've had over the last 2 seasons, Puka, Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, Nico Collins broke out in that last 2 years. Amon-Ra St. Brown was the year before. Where these guys have just kind of risen to the top of the position. And there's kind of a bit of a chasm, I feel like, between the like top 16, 17 wide receivers and then the rest. And so I understand that. I think that's fair. I would disagree with the value insulation thing. I think that that's recency bias, personally. We've seen, if you go back several years, like before the Jefferson Chase, years, we had a lot of volatility at the wide receiver position. We had Juju Smith-Schuster as the overall wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. We had Chris Godwin going in the first or early second round of startups at one point. We had A.J. Brown jump up to that 1-2 turn of startups and never really pay off the value. He held value like fairly well, but he never really paid off that price. There's been a good number of wide receivers that have really emerged as expensive premium assets and then kind of flamed out. And when you look at the quarterbacks, like, yeah, you can point to CJ Stroud and you can say, okay, CJ Stroud jumped up to 3rd overall and now he's a 2nd round startup pick. Okay, but I'll take your CJ Stroud and I will raise you Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts. I mean, the rushing quarterbacks for sure have been super duper safe investments. Kyler Murray tore his ACL, hasn't gotten that value back, but that can happen to any player. That can happen to a wide receiver just as easily. They have longer peaks, like they have longer careers, and they score more points. So I think when you're getting one of those true advantages at the position, I think it's still worth it. So I disagree with them saying, like, one thing they said in the video was that it's actually an advantage to be on the turn because you're getting 2 of these premium players rather than 1. I don't agree with that. I'm pretty sure that I'd still rather have like Jaden Daniels plus Ladd McConkey or Jaden Daniels plus Drake London than have, let's say, Lamb plus Puka at the turn. Like, I feel pretty good about having Jaden Daniels or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson in that case. What I can say is I've never liked Burrow's cost. I never really was into like Herbert as when he was in the first round of startups. I can totally see how these pocket passers should be devalued a little bit. Like, I could see a case for pushing up the Neighbors, Puka, Lamb group ahead of Burrow, ahead of Mahomes. We've already obviously done that. But I don't know. It's really tough because these wide receivers have shorter peaks. Like, it's an uncomfortable conversation, right? But let's think about Justin Jefferson for a second. Justin Jefferson is going to be 26 in a week and a half. And of course that's not old, right? 26 is not old. But once wide receivers get to 28, 29, 30, they do not hold their value very well. Like, how much longer are we really talking about Justin Jefferson being a first round startup pick? He probably will be next year, but the year after that, I would bet against it. I would bet that by 2027 offseason, Justin Jefferson is not a first round startup pick anymore. So you know who probably will be? Josh Allen. You know who probably will be? Almost certainly will be Jaden Daniels. Lamar Jackson. Those guys are still going to be first rounders. So I don't know. I don't really agree with this. Like, totally think it's fine to go with wide receivers in startups. And again, the way I have it ranked, if you're picking anywhere on the back half of the board, you're probably getting wide receivers. I have from picks 4 through 14, or let's just say 4 through 18, I have Chase, Jefferson, Bowers, Hurts, Burrow, Neighbors, Lamb, Puka, Mahomes, Thomas, Amon-Ra, and then I have the 3 big running backs, and then I have Nico. So, and Mahomes is a guy where I don't even really want him there. I feel like I have to put him there. I might move Mahomes down further, but I'm already pushing the wide receivers up quite a bit. I think when you start saying that they're in the same conversation as Lamar, Allen, or Daniels is where you start to lose me a little bit. Because like last year, okay, we got 23.7 points per game from Jamar. Then after that, we got 18.8 from Puka. We got 18.7 from Jefferson, 18.7 from Amon-Ra. We got 18.2 from Neighbor, 17.6 from Nico. Okay, so the only one that got to 20 points per game was Chase. And then you go to quarterback, and I understand you have to rank them relative to other quarterbacks, not just like quarterback versus wide receiver. But at the same time, if they're scoring more points, then more points are going into your lineup. And it's like, you do want to score as many points as you can. We have Lamar at 25.8, Allen 22.8, Burrow 22.8, Hurts 21.7, Jaden Daniels 21.5. Like, these guys clearly have the higher scoring ceiling, where, yeah, Chase in an absolutely insane, perfect, triple crown winning season can match one of these elite quarterbacks. Nobody should expect that to happen again next year. Like, it would be a very, very good outcome if Jamar Chase gets to 20 points per game again. That would be really great. He's probably not going to. Whereas these quarterbacks, like, you can safely project them for that. And that's not even talking about a 6 point per passing touchdown league. At least I don't think it is. It might be. I can't tell. Let's see. What's a scoring setting where I know it's 4 point? FanDuel does. Can somebody confirm for me? I'm pretty sure FanDuel does 4 point passing touchdowns. I'm just trying to set it to a scoring system that I know would be accurate for 4 point, because it doesn't say. Okay. I'm gonna say yes. Lamar scored 25.9 points per game in FanDuel scoring. I kind of think that that's correct. Regardless, it definitely makes sense drafting wide receivers early. I think that their whole idea is like just slightly overstated. So let me catch up with this a little bit. So Jake says, I've played around with the strat of waiting on quarterbacks until round 4 or 5, and it can be a gamble depending on where you pick in those rounds. Things can get ugly quickly in the 5th if there's an early run. Yes. So you're obviously playing with fire a little bit if you're just skipping quarterbacks entirely early on. HM says, I just started with Jaden Daniels at 1-2, was able to move up in the 2nd to get Mahomes in 6 point passing touchdown. Valid, or do you think Mahomes is going to keep losing value? I mean, I really struggle with Mahomes. He's such a unique case because we know that how good he is, and he has such a long history of being so good. But at the same time, like, he's turning 30 this year, and he still has Matt Nagy as his offensive coordinator. They're going to need to change some tendencies a little bit if they're going to recapture the magic of Mahomes from years past. So I don't think he's going to fall out of the top 2 rounds of startups, but I could see him being more in the late 2nd if he struggles again. But that being said, because he's Mahomes, if he starts to do Mahomes things again, he's going to jump back up. So I don't think it's a terrible pick. It's one of those things where it's like, you're paying for safety, you're paying for, strangely enough, which is not the case usually with a 30-year-old quarterback, you are paying for some value upside with him if he starts to be his old self. But he's probably not going to score much better than guys you can get rounds later, which is kind of it's a tough pill to swallow, I think. But yeah, just looking at the ADP right now on Dynasty Daddy, let's filter it to like, let's just see. Let's look at like the last month or so. 244 drafts. Excuse me. Crazy. Bijan Robinson going at 109 and Saquon going at 204. I wish I could play with these casuals, man. Wish I could find these leagues. Absolutely insane behavior. So we've actually got Mahomes. Where's Mahomes? At 112 in the ADP. And so there's only 6 quarterbacks in the first round right now. 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers. Chase, Jefferson, Neighbors. Bowers in the first round. And then we've got Lamb, Genty, Amon-Ra, Brian Thomas. That's interesting. So Genty's actually been going ahead of Amon-Ra, Brian Thomas, and Puka over the last month in startups. Saquon, McBride, Caleb, Herbert, Nico, May, London. So, you know, I can see where they're coming from when you say, okay, well, what if you start your draft Neighbors, Amon-Ra, Travis Hunter, and then you can still get Kyler and Dak, right, in 5-6. That feels pretty good. Obviously, that feels really good. But at the same time, you could go like Jaden Daniels, Drake London, Ladd McConkey, and then you could still get like Lawrence, and then go, you know, running back with like, you could go Judkins, you know, maybe Taylor if he falls. So I think there are merits to both sides, but I still think that the quarterbacks are safer. The one thing I'm probably getting away from is the quarterback start. I don't think I want to do 2 quarterbacks because I do really want to be hitting these quarterback values in the 4th and 5th. So that's the part of their case I can totally see. I don't really want to go like Lamar Herbert or like Lamar May or Lamar Caleb. And that can be tough because a lot of the best values in the late second are probably quarterbacks. But what you can do there is just you can try to trade up. Like I would love to get Jaden Daniels and then be able to trade up and get Puka or Brian Thomas or something in the mid-second. Or just trade down. You can also trade down. That's fine. Pick up some future draft capital or something and just bypass that group of quarterbacks entirely. Maybe give yourself an extra pick in the 4th round so you can draft Rashee Rice and still get Trevor Lawrence. So you can draft Trevion Henderson and you can still get JJ McCarthy or whatever. So there's a lot of ways to do it. I'm never really going to agree with a one-size-fits-all type of strategy. I can say like, this is probably where you're going to get the best values, play the board. But I think they do good stuff over there, but I think that their content is, their goal is to like boil it down to the most cookie cutter, repeatable type of strategy so that it's like extremely actionable. It's like, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, this is what you do. And now you win your league. And it's just never that simple because there's so many variables that go into it. There's like just the psychology of what other managers are doing. I think it's a disservice to your league to be like, your listeners to be like, yeah, you just got to go in and draft these wide receivers. And then then what happens? They jump into a draft through their Discord where everybody's trying to do this same strategy. They're all going to get pushed up. And the one person that gets into that draft that knows how to like zig when everyone else zags is going to clean up on value because you can't just have one strategy. It's not going to work. If everybody's trying to do that strategy, you need to do a different strategy. You need to do the opposite. So I think it's better to just be able to look at the board and just see like who is efficiently priced and who's not. And that's really how I like to do things. Now, I think when I put out my startup strategy guide, I will probably take a look and kind of map out what I think my ideal draft would look like from the front or the back half of the board and just like play through it as a hypothetical. But again, I'm always going to reiterate, you got to play the board. You have to take advantage of the edges that you can find and not just go into it saying, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. Yellow says that's what I did in Pure Potential Invitational too. Yeah, didn't you draft like 1 million running backs in that league? I'm pretty curious to see how that's going to pan out. Marty says, I'm taking advantage of them leagues with your rankings, so I appreciate them. Hey, man, I appreciate you signing up for the rankings. I certainly hope that they serve you well. Every time you post a screenshot of one of your teams, I think, man, I wish that was my team. So just know that if your teams go south, I'll be going south with you, because those are the guys that I like to build around for sure. But when I'm looking at the startups, like, I'm just not sure what I want to tell people to do. It feels difficult because I feel like I'm always just trying to kind of game the system and like play around with the who are my league mates? What are they going to prioritize? Where can I get value? So short of highlighting like who I think is undervalued, where I think some hot spots are, I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to put in this guide. I'm definitely going to tell people to try to hammer those quarterbacks in the 4, 5, 6 range. I think that's pretty big. Definitely can point out some players I'd avoid. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still thinking about it. I don't want to just like throw something out there to do it. Like, I mean, it's a great time to put a video out, but I don't want to just like put out some half-baked nonsense. I do want to give people good advice. So I need to think about it a little more. Unfortunately, my last startup was an auction draft, so that didn't help me at all get any content. But yeah, it's whatever. Austin's finally here. Don't give me a tardy. I will not put it in your permanent record. I did answer your question about your first rounders back at the beginning, so just be aware of that. Let's talk about DFS Killer 98 had a pretty simple question. He said, why is the ceiling of Addison or Flowers limited? So I guess he just meant those two in particular and not like anyone else in that range. But I could definitely talk about that. I do want to talk about why those guys are limited. So there's two different reasons. When it comes to Flowers, it's mostly a situational thing. It's just the fact that the Ravens do not throw the ball enough. Like Zay Flowers had like a 26% target share last year, and he scored 12 points per game. On a team that wants to throw the ball, Zay Flowers' peripheral numbers would be fantastic. He's got over 2 yards per out run, over a 25% target share. He'd be a very useful wide receiver. The problem is he's got 2 more years minimum, probably 3, with the Ravens because of the 5th-year option. So you've got to deal with that. And there's really, while the Ravens could certainly take a little uptick in pass attempts from where they've been, it's really hard for me to picture them making a huge departure from that. Like, we want to say talent over situation, and talent is why he's as high as he is in the rankings, based on what he scored last year. But there's a limit to that. Like, how can I reasonably project Lamar Jackson, who's only really ever had 1 season above average in pass attempts, on a team that has a good defense, that has Derrick Henry? How do I project that team to throw the ball, 550 times or whatever? Like, it just isn't going to happen. And so you have to look at Zay Flowers, a guy who's going to turn 25 this year, as a guy who throughout his prime is probably going to be limited by a situation. And that just is what it is. With Addison, his per out numbers really aren't that impressive. His per out numbers are fine, but he is a clear-cut wide receiver 2 type of guy. Like, it's not like, oh, well, imagine if Jordan Addison didn't have Justin Jefferson. Like, I don't really think he's that type of player. He's a very solid wide receiver 2, but like, you can look at last year, 20% targets per out run, 1.87 yards per out run. Like, that's fine. It's not anything incredibly special. He had 875 yards in 15 games. Really, the only reason he was able to get to the 12.3 points per game that he did score. Oh, sorry, that's wrong. That's half PPR. I think he was around 14 points per game. The only reason he got that high is because he scored 9 touchdowns. And he's scored a lot of touchdowns in back-to-back years, so maybe that's just a thing that he does, but he's not earning targets at a really impressive rate. He's not really being efficient with those targets at a really impressive rate. He's just a really solid wide receiver who's in a good environment, should be a high scoring offense. And that's really why he is where he is. And if there was a Jefferson injury, you could pencil him in for some increase in his role, but he's never going to be an elite wide receiver, I don't think. At this point, I think we kind of know what he is. So those guys, I think, have limited upside. I'd put Devonta Smith in the same category. Like if you took Devonta Smith and you made him the wide receiver 1 for the Cowboys or something like that, I think he could score a lot better than he has to this point. He, similar to Zay Flowers, like he has really strong peripherals. He has 25-26% target shares. He is efficient. But he's on a team that doesn't throw. He plays with AJ Brown. That's a big ask. Like that's a tough thing. But his numbers are much better than Addison's. 23% targets per outrun this past year, 25% target share overall, 2.29 yards per outrun. Very efficient. So I love Devonta Smith as a talent, but he's turning 27 this year. The Eagles are probably going to be bottom 5 in pass attempts again. The only way he's hitting a ceiling is if AJ Brown suffers a major injury. Not really something I'm going to bet on. Jake says, talk about dead zones to try to trade out of. Yeah, I definitely want to talk about trading in startups. And I think I want to talk about when you should be, talk about the possibility of being more aggressive with trading as well. And what kind of assets I really want to be taking in startups is like, I want to be, and this is something the Dynasty Points guys touched on, but I think it's a great point, and it's kind of intuitively like how I'm typically drafting is I want to be targeting assets that are harder to get later. So I think there is some merit to the idea of like trading away your future picks in a startup if it means you can secure another scarce asset. If you can get an extra McConkey, an extra Tet McMillan or something out of trading a future pick, I think that that's worth doing. And looking at the board, if I just squint and ignore the quarterbacks, I feel like there's a pretty nice little drop off at the end of the 4th round because you get Travion Henderson, you get Rashee Rice in the 4th. T. Higgins is whatever. He's not my favorite. And then you get to Judkins, Jacobs, Cook, McCaffrey, Adunze, Chase Brown, Devonta Smith, Derrick Henry, Xavier Worthy, Zay Flowers, Terry McLaurin, Kenneth Walker. These are not players I feel like I need. Like, I don't know. I feel like if I'm trading, I'd rather try to get an extra pick in that 3rd or early 4th round, and I'd be fine to miss out on the 5th. I'd be fine to miss out on the 6th, I think. Personally, just looking at it right now, like I don't care if I walk out of a startup and I don't have Zay Flowers, or I don't care if I walk out and I don't have Rome Odunze or James Cook. Like, it could be like I wouldn't mind drafting like an RJ Harvey, a Emeka Egbuka, or something like that. I think Colston Loveland's a strong value because you can kind of like, you know, build your tight end room through him if you miss out on the top 2 guys. But in general, it feels like kind of a dead zone there where like, do I really feel worse if I'm in the 7th round getting Jordan Addison or Chris Olave or George Pickens or Chuba Hubbard or whoever? Like, I don't know. Probably not. I guess the running backs also drop off. You drop off to like a Mixon, Kamara, Montgomery. So there is a drop off with the running backs, but I also think in your typical, in the startups you guys are going to be in, I don't think the running backs are going to go this high. I think some of them are going to leak into the 7th, or at least the 6th. I don't know. I'm still thinking about it. I am still thinking about it. Maybe I need one more startup draft to really figure this out for me. You're in a redraft now? You're doing a redraft league right now? And why do you have 3 quarterbacks? Is this a super flex redraft league? If so, I like that quarterback room a lot. Yella says, you mean there's no drop off after Odunze? Yeah, no, I can't say that I think that there's a drop off after Odunze. That was probably the weirdest thing that they said in that startup video, Dynasty Domain, was that the wide receiver tier drop comes after T. Higgins and Rome Odunze. Like, I don't know what he's done to really deserve that, but anyway, whatever. Also, Yella, is that it looks like you're rocking a new like logo thing. Where did that come from? It's pretty cool looking. I like it. All right, we're going back to Yella's questions to wrap this thing up, and then maybe talk a little best ball with Austin. So the first thing that Yella asked me to talk about was the two firsts theorem, which I guess is something that he's coined, which is the idea that, and he can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the idea is if a running back is worth two firsts, trade them for two firsts instead of keeping them, unless their name is Bijan or Gibbs or Genty, which feels kind of a little bit arbitrary and a little bit wordy. I mean, I agree with the broader point, which is like if a running back is really valuable, you probably you should understand the risk there. And I don't know, like I would trade away Saquon for two firsts. I would trade Hampton for two firsts. I would trade Achane for two firsts. Like if I look at the rankings right now, the highest, my running back 4, I have around 1.5 base ones. Barkley, Achane, Bucky are between 1.25 and 1.5 base ones. Henderson's around 1. I just don't, like, I guess that's a fine heuristic. I just don't know how often it's actionable. Like, who's giving you two firsts for these guys? I mean, in some casual leagues, you can probably get two firsts for Barkley, and I would take that. But I don't know. I just don't know how actionable this is, really, personally. And you said Bijan's the only exception. Are you saying if are we in any leagues together that you have Jahmyr Gibbs? Like, can I trade you two firsts for Jahmyr Gibbs? Because I would totally do that. I bet you don't have him in this. I bet you don't have him in this league. Let's see. Yeah, no, you have Bijan, you have Achane, Henry, McCaffrey, Walker. Yeah, no. Not going to work. Oh, well. I tried. Nobody can say I didn't try. No, I'm just setting my lineup for week 1 here. I like this running back room I've got. Bucky, Chuba, Pollard. It's pretty sick. It's pretty solid. Do I only have 2 quarterbacks in this league? Oh, no, I have Fields. Sweet. Okay. I like this team. I have a good team in this league. All right. So anyway, I guess that's fine. Like, probably a reasonable thing to do. I don't have any issues with it. And then I like this question. In Dynasty, how long of a window should you be making decisions in? 3-year windows, depends on rebuilding, retooling, competing. Yeah, I fully reject the window-based approach to Dynasty. Every time I hear the domain guys talk about 3-year windows, it makes me cringe. Because they're like, oh, Dak versus Herbert, like who, in a 3-year window, like those guys are going to score the same. Yeah, and in 3 years, Dak's going to be 35 and Herbert's going to be 28, 29. And then what? Like, obviously, you're going to have Herbert. The reason that Herbert is valued well ahead of Dak is that in 3 years, you're going to get similar production from both, and then Dak is going to die, and Herbert is going to be worth the same thing he's worth right now. So I don't agree. Like, if you're playing in a 3-year window, but like acknowledging the value, depreciation, and loss of your assets, I guess that's fine. I have never once thought about my team in more than like one offseason at a time. Like, what position is my team probably going to be in next offseason if I make this move? So it's not like, okay, I'm buying Christian McCaffrey and he can probably be good for 2 years. And so I need to consider like, okay, I can do anything I want with him for these 2 years. So I need to value him higher than Bucky Irving because he's going to score more points than Bucky Irving in the next 2 years. I don't know. I can't even like wrap my head around their way of thinking about this, honestly. I'm just thinking like, okay, if I acquire an asset today, what is most likely going to be the outcome for that asset next offseason? If I buy McCaffrey today, he's going to be worth less next year. What can I sell him for next year? He's going for a late first right now. What do I think he's reasonably going for next year? Early second? Maybe he gets hurt again and he's worth nothing. But I'm just acknowledging, like, if I'm buying him, I'm just acknowledging, like, okay, there's downside risk that he's going to go to 0 on this team. I just can't think of a situation where I'm actually going out and buying or selling a player based on what's going to happen the next 3 years. Because most players' outlooks are going to change a lot in the next 3 years in ways that we can't predict. You know, if you bought Sam Laporta after his rookie season with like a 3-year outlook in mind, like, where is he now after the first year of that, right? Or like you go and buy who's like a young player that, or like an older player that you thought would be gone. I don't know. I'm blanking right now. I don't know. I just think it's a weird concept. Like, it's so hard to predict anything 3 years from now. Like, we have no idea what the league's going to look like. I think it makes the most sense to just imagine your team on a year-to-year basis. Also, I agree, but how long does the average league last? I mean, I've never had any of my leagues fold that I'm aware of. So I can't really answer this question. Like, I guess the average league doesn't last forever, but I've found all my leagues have lasted as long as I've been in them. And that includes leagues that have been going on for like 6 or 7 years now. Even though there's been turnover, we've lost managers, we just replaced them with new people. So I don't know. I don't really expect my leagues to fold, but I'm also always competing when I reasonably can. So it doesn't really matter. I'm not like, oh, I can't wait to be good in 3 years. I hope my league doesn't fold. And I guess that's the other thing too, is like, if you know that you're never rebuilding for more than one season, unless you have to, don't you just kind of play things out? Don't you just play out your hand and try to postpone that rebuild as long as you can? And then when it becomes inevitable, you just do it. And then you're back where you started. Again, I don't, maybe I'm having a mental block right now. I really just can't figure out where the 3-year window actually helps you with team building. Like, if I'm making a decision in a startup today and I'm looking at Saquon Barkley at the 206, I would never click him there. But if I'm thinking about, oh, what's going to happen in the next 3 years, and I only care about production for the next 3 years, shouldn't I be taking Barkley there? Because, like, he's going to score over 20 points per game this year probably, and he could feasibly project for that again the next year after that. If I don't care about value atrophy, like, why wouldn't I take Saquon there? Why wouldn't I take Christian McCaffrey in the 4th of a startup? Like, I don't know. I feel like it just encourages you to make irresponsible decisions rather than good decisions. And I think, like, wouldn't it push you away from rookies too? Because with a rookie, you're kind of envisioning like a longer runway, and you're probably not getting a whole lot out of one of those 3 years, this upcoming year. Wouldn't that push you to devalue a Ted McMillan, devalue a Travis Hunter? I don't know. I reject the premise. You will never see me bringing up windows like that in Dynasty. It's not how I do it. My brain genuinely does not work that way. So that is that. Yella, are you being so for real about ChatGPT? What did you, just out of curiosity, because I've never really messed around with the image generation on there. Like, what did you type in to get that? I mean, it's really small, so maybe it looks dumb if it's bigger. I don't know. Let me see. No, I mean, it looks kind of cool. It's got like trees in the background or something. I can see some like imperfections with the background, because it looks, on the right they start to look like little spaceships, and on the left they look like trees. But I am kind of curious what you typed in to get that. They actually said this. A player that will produce now is worth more than your 27 first. Yeah, we just don't agree. Jake's, what you're saying is join some domain startups. Yeah, apparently join some startups and trade for all their 27 firsts is what you should be doing, for sure. I would love to get in one, honestly. All right, so at the end here, Austin sent in one of his best ball teams. listen, if you guys have no interest in underdog at all, not even just as a conversation, you are welcome to tune out. We've gotten through our dynasty topics for today. I would like to address Austin's question about his best ball draft, and seems fun. So I'm going to throw that up on the screen here, and I'm just going to talk through what he did, and we can see if he should be doing anything differently. Wow, that is a really big image. Okay, let's just make that a lot smaller. What the heck? There we go. Flipped it. This is hard to do. Apologies. Okay. So, Austin drafted this team, basically drafting off ADP, being conscious of drafting stacks and staying balanced. Is this a good or a bad strategy? What is your strategy when drafting? It's more a best ball strategy. Doesn't need to be that personal. No, that's fine. I'll talk strategy. I just wanted to look at the team. So you've got a Goff, Dart, Kyron, Pollard, Swift, Warren, Garendo, Wright, Neighbors, Amon-Ra, Evans, Waddle, Rome, Besh, McMillan, Wilson, and Njoku, Ferguson. So the way I'm approaching drafts, so first of all, I use the legendary upside rankings just because I'm too lazy to make my own rankings. And Pat Crane is pretty smart with best ball stuff, and he's got a good team. So I just like to use their rankings. Technically, his rankings are for Best Ball Mania. And I guess what's kind of important to understand about Underdog is the tournament strategy is all pretty similar because you have to get through the 14-week regular season, and you have to finish first or second, usually top 2 in your pod of 12 teams. And then you have to survive 3 weeks in a row of elimination games where you basically have to finish first in your group of 10 or top 2 in your group of 18 or something to move on to the next round. And so what's important about this is giving yourself ceiling options at each position where you can theoretically see your team smashing in a given week in 15, 16, and 17 in order to really win money. Like, you have to survive, because if you're not making the finals, you're not making money. So that is an important thing to keep in mind. But in different tournaments, you have different sizes. And so the bigger the tournament, the more you have to like really get weird and like really hit on some 99th percentile outcomes. Because Best Ball Mania has like 600,000 entries, and each playoff week is like 1 out of 18 or something gets to the next round. So it's really tight. You have to hit the highest end outcomes. And that's why people get so into like the week 17 correlations, trying to build these like little game stacks and things like that. When you're in a smaller field tournament, which is what I like to do, you can play it a little more straightforward. So what I'm looking to do is I am looking to stack. That is really valuable in best ball. Stacking quarterbacks with their either receivers or tight ends or even running backs sometimes if they catch passes, which you've done here. You've got Goff and Amon-Ra, you've got Dart and Neighbors, but you got to give yourself enough firepower to get through the tournament. So like one thing I would see with this team, you're too light at quarterback. This is going to have to be a 3 quarterback build. Because you're not going to get Dart until at least like week 4, week 5 at the earliest. And Goff on his own is not giving you enough of a ceiling to keep you in this thing. I would add a 3rd quarterback, like somebody in the Geno Stafford range if I was going to do this. Somebody, and like Geno would have made sense with this team because you have Jack Besh. And then I'd say the same about tight ends as well. Like Ferguson is a guy I wouldn't really expect much from this year. I don't think the legendary upside team actually even has him ranked. I'd go in Njoku, and then maybe somebody in like if I'm going 2 tight ends, somebody like Ferguson, maybe like a Brenton Strange, but you don't want to go too light at either position, I don't think, because you do have to have some ceiling there. As far as your like positional allocations, I really like the 2-6-8-2 build. If I'm going extra at like a 3rd quarterback, I'll try to get stronger wide receivers so I can maybe just stop at 7. And yeah, so, you know, you're trying to stay balanced. I will say I really like the wide receivers early. Like I like to go to get like 2 wide receivers at least in my first 3 picks. I think that there's a really good pocket of running back value right now in like the 4, 5, 6 area, where you have Hampton and Henderson and Breece Hall and Walker and Hubbard, Connor even. I like that group. Harvey's there. And then I really like the quarterbacks that all kind of seem to go in the same range, where I hate all the other players that are going between like Bo Nix, Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert, Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, Dak Prescott, even CJ Stroud, JJ McCarthy. I really like grabbing quarterbacks in that range, like 2 or 3 quarterbacks in there. So that's that's what I got. And then when you're building a running back room, like I don't hate what you have here, because you have a good mixture of like you want some early season production, which you have in Kyron and Pollard and Swift and Warren. Those are kind of safe plays. And then Garendo and Wright are both like, maybe they end up being the starter in week 16 or 17, and they're like the guy that you needed because they got 25 touches and they scored 30 points. So I kind of like the mixture there of the upside and the safety at running back. I like your wide receiver room. I just think the quarterback and the tight end here is a little bit too weak. In general, if I'm not taking a quarterback until that middle of the draft sort of glob of quarterbacks, I probably want 2 of those guys. If I'm taking an earlier quarterback like a Jaden Daniels or a Josh Allen, I'm pretty fine. I'm still fine taking one of those mid-group guys, but I'm also fine waiting and taking like a Geno or Stafford or Cam Ward to pair with that elite quarterback, because I'm banking on them having a lot of usable weeks. Thoughts on elite quarterback? It's not my favorite way to build, but I do think all the elite quarterbacks are pretty fairly priced. Like, I think they're all worth mixing in. If I was drafting one team and one team only, I don't think I would go for an elite quarterback with that one team. But if you're building out a lot of teams, it's totally possible that the elite quarterbacks are the guys that bury you in the playoff weeks. And it's like, it's worthwhile to have some teams where you do go for an Allen or a Daniels or a Hurts, because they could genuinely be the ceiling week that you need in the playoffs. You just want to make sure that you don't leave yourself too weak at wide receiver. Like, the team I'm most likely to go elite quarterback is probably one where I've probably started with 2 wide receivers, because then I know I'm going to have enough firepower there. Whereas if I start with like a Bijan and then I'm also skipping a wide receiver to take an Allen or Daniels, now I'm really relying on some mid-round guys to come through for me. And that feels kind of tough. So those are some general things. I do post teams from time to time, so you can see those as well, if that gives that can give you some idea of what to do. But hopefully that helps. I mean, you're definitely on the right track there. I think you've got a good idea. Jake says it's probably a blessing I can't use underdog here. Yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's a little addicting at times. Luckily, I don't have enough time to sit down and do a lot of drafts right now, so I'm in a good amount of slow drafts, but I'm not sitting down and doing a lot of fast drafts because I just don't have time for them. So that's saving me some money. But it's fun. You're probably going to lose money on it, because in these tournaments, like, most people lose because all the prize money's up top. And you could do like the little self-contained 12-man leagues that I have on there, but when there's no big prize money at the end, it kind of defeats the purpose. So it's whatever. It's probably smarter to not play, but I do enjoy it. Anyway, guys, this is going to wrap it up for tonight. Appreciate you hanging out, throwing some ideas out there about startups and interacting in the chat. So, yeah, have a good night, everybody. I'll see you in the Discord, and maybe I'll see you in the underdog lobbies sometime soon. Have a good night.